Hi everyone, so this is an addendum to the last video on the solstice ritual, which I saw, basically to summarize, I saw these connections between what was happening in Ireland in terms of the movement of the moon through the zodiac constellations that we do know are on Ireland in these correct positions of the zodiac wheel, which can be also represented by this Kabbalistic tree of life. I noticed that the movement of the moon into certain star signs with the current events that unfolded was matching up in a very eerie way to what happened last solstice in a different part of the world, with the Vatican's ritual of opening these holy doors. And I began to see that they opened them on the same days when the moon entered a particular star sign. And that's what we were tracking last time with Ireland and the current events that were happening there in terms of the protests turning into riots, turning into loose energy, turning into fueling angry energy into the false temple of Israel in the Middle East, and then the current events leading to them bombing Iran, right? Very, very interesting when you put it into the context of Ireland is an island facing west that looks like a human body. And as Rudolf Steiner has told us 100 years ago, that Ireland is the mirror of the Garden of Paradise. It has a very interesting connection back to source. And when you undo that kind of cryptic riddle, you realize that Ireland is the mirror of the human body, and the human body is the true Garden of Paradise. And this is what has been stolen from us information-wise when Roman Catholic Church stole the Bible from Ireland, and to cover that up, they went around the world destroying all of the original temples. And they also made their false temple in the Middle East. And then they externalized the teachings, what were only ever meant to be inner allegorical spiritual teachings of archetypes and processes of inner alchemy and harmony with the as above, so below constellations, cosmic connection with the human body and the environment that we live in, to balance ourselves in harmony. They took all of that within information and they made it without, they made it external, and they created, the Messiah, the Jesus, the real people running around in the Middle East, and they relabeled parts of the Middle East, Bible parts, when they went there in the Crusades and made war on everyone and conquered the land, and then they relabeled it and created a false history. That's the summary, which I've made a 7-part series about called War in the Name of God. So if you want the greater context for where I'm getting this information, check that out. It's there for you as a gift, because I couldn't get past any of this until I did that massive inspection. Was McDarry right? Looking into events in history, can I find what he found? And I did, and it's the only thing that makes sense in terms of what's going on in the Middle East and the war that never ends. And why has it gone so horrible? It's because the Garden of Eden, the reflection of it, has been inverted and flipped and mirrored and turned inside out. And what would be the inside out of love? War, right? So that's the context for what I'm talking about. It is inner alchemy in the sense that this is what we do when we do the sacred secretion practice. We're focusing on all of these cosmic connections with the constellations and the movements of the moon and the sun. But interestingly, someone else is focusing on those movements too, and they're injecting into those movements of the moon and the sun very, very interesting, coincidental current event happenings, which are not small deals. They're big deals, what's been happening. So, in the last video talking about when the moon moved into the air sign of Libra, the position of the mouth, that's when it all started kicking off in Ireland on June the 7th. And we had a protest in Cork, a protest in Dublin, a protest in Antrim. This one was anti-immigration. This one in Antrim was anti-Gaza. Then we had a March for Jesus happening up there on the same day. And then this is the same day that the Ballymena girl was assaulted by two foreign boys that were from Romania, but they kept saying Romas, Rome, Rome, Rome. And that's all happening in the brain of Ireland as the moon is moving through these zodiac positions, encircling the brain of Ireland, and all of that louche energy has been gathered up, the protest energy has been gathered up, and what we know that happened is that on the 13th, when the moon entered into Capricorn, all of that louche energy got sent into the false temple of Israel, which would be in this position here, the brainstem, the back of the neck. If you see my work, you'll see that when I flip the map of Ireland upside down, put it on the Middle East, that is where Israel would be. And all of that energy got gathered up, the most hateful, angry energy I've ever felt in my whole life on that Sagittarius full moon. It was because I was feeling what was happening here in Ireland, and it all got shot down into the earth as the attack from Israel into Iran. And then the energy started moving back into the Aquarius position, which is the air position here. And now we've circled the brain of Ireland. So this is a giant circling the square ritual. These Kabbalistic tree of life, I'll show us soon, but this is the squares, not just squares, flat squares, but cubes in a three-dimensional map. And so this is the moon circling through the squares. And so what was the part I missed out, which was that the next day on June the 14th, we had the movement of the sun. The sun entered the position of Gemini. And what do we know is that every month the sun will change into a different zodiac constellation, and that marks out which month is what. And so June is always about Gemini. So the sun moved into Gemini on June the 14th, and that happened to be the birthday of Trump turning 79. On the same day, they had a military anniversary, 250 years, and all of the people then in LA were protesting against Trump on his birthday for a big military parade that had happened just after Israel, the false temple, bombed Iran, expanding their, their holy land, you could say. While all of this is happening, and then I began to link it together as well. Like today, the moon moves into Gemini. So we've done all this. We've gone around this. Now we're here. The moon has moved into Gemini. The sun is already there. So we've got an alignment with the moon and the sun in Gemini today. And when we add up this numerologically, Trump's 79th birthday is a 7. The 250 years of the military is a 7. Today, the moon entering into Gemini, 25th, is a 7. And so we've got a 777. And this is very interesting if you look at the entire diagram as a whole holistic body diagram. We know that this Kabbalistic tree of life is the human body. When you fit it onto Ireland and match up the zodiac, it fits in this way. Color-coded, white is air, green is water, red is fire, and yellow is earth. Earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water, fire. Following the paths from Sephiroth to Sephiroth, circle to circle, following the squares around the circles, the following path, when you match up the Kabbalistic tree of life to the tarot cards, these are the Trump cards, all these connecting paths, okay? Trump. And so we've gone around from air to today we're back into air. And that's the 777, which is basically what's the magic about the 7 is that it's a 90-degree angle, and the cube or the square is the first form of crystalline matter that all other geometrical shapes birth themselves from. So the material world is all about squares and cubes, right? So this is the cubing of the material world, and this using the cycles of the moon and the sun is to manipulate the people within that material world with these false flag things that they did, because no one's that organized in the world of protesters. No one's that organized to have all of these things kick off on the same day and then all of the stuff flow on afterwards, right? This is a setup. It's a long game. So 777, when you look into the cube formation of the Kabbalistic tree of life, we can do it like this. So here's the front face of the cube, second front face of the cube. Here's the top face. Here would be the back face. Here's the second back face. And then there's the base. So when we bring the square into the realm of 3 dimensions and we have a cube, if we put our human body in the center of that and stand on the axis point on the pole, you've got in front of you, depending on which way you're facing, northeast, south, and west, going around the 4 directions in a plane, in a flat earth, kind of plane. Then you've got above and below, so that's 6 directions. 1, 2, 3, 4 around, and then 5, 6 as above, so below. And when you intersect all of those faces back together again, what's left in the center is the 7th point. The 7. So the 7th zone in terms of this upper cauldron, this upper energy center of Ireland, is the Lake of Loch Ness, which is the horsemen, the Lake of the Horsemen that the River Bann flows through. And we know, well, from my work in my 3rd book, I've found out that Bann, Ard Bann As, it means the River Jordan in the false temple. So that's the 7, that's the cube, that's the 90-degree right angles. That is the number 7. And so then we can continue 1 down again. We've got the same thing. And then if we were to keep continuing it, we would just add in another one of these below or above, depending on which way you want to go. Evolution, devolution, the spiral of the Jacob's Ladder, tree of life. Then interestingly, with this whole Trump thing, because they were calling him the No King, and then down here in this Malkuth position, which is off the zodiac, it's this weird extra one, right? That's the position called kingdom. But if we were to continue this diagram down and slot another set of cubes on, that kingdom becomes the crown. So the kingdom and the crown are the interchangeable parts. And once you've gone around all of the paths, all of the trumps, all of the possible directions of the tree of life, and you come to the final end point, you've got the kingdom because you've done all of the paths of the hero's journey, or whatever you want to call it, and you've claimed your crown and your kingdom. So that's sort of interesting part of it all, because what's above that is the Gemini position when the sun moves in, and today we're in the moon into the Gemini. So all of this is relating back to Gemini. It's the month of Gemini, and what's very interesting about Gemini, not his birthday, but Rome. In my research in that War in the Name of God series, I wanted to know, what is the meaning of Rome? What is the etymological meaning of Rome? And McDarry tells us it's related back to the Romulus and Remus, and even Wikipedia tells us the same. And that's all about the constellation of Gemini. So every time there's something to do with Gemini, in my eyes, I see it as something to do with Rome. We've got the 2 Romanian boys, all of this stuff going on while the moon or the sun is moving into Gemini. They're using the energy of the solstices. This is the solstice in summer on Ireland. This is solstice in winter on Ireland. It's the solstices. This is the equinoxes in terms of like the anatomical region of the body as well. So they're using from this winter solstice and the holy doors to this solstice that occurred when the moon entered into Aries, they did this ritual on Ireland because of all the things that happened there. And then they used all of that energy to push energy into the false temple, and then he just connects himself into it from his namesake and all of the other stuff. So that's sort of what I'm noticing at the moment. What I suggested in the last video is that I've already prepared for us a Psalm 23 in Irish, that you get a glass of water and you program the vibration of that psalm into the water, and you cover up the water so it doesn't get influenced by light from other things. And you pop it on, this time, the moon moving into Gemini, but then in 2 days' time it's going to move into Cancer, then it's going to move to Leo, then it's going to move to Virgo. Every 2.5 days the moon's going to be doing that. So what you could do, if you really wanted to do the protection of the hologram, which is the greater hologram of the smaller hologram, which is every single human, is put a Psalm 23 glass or crystal on a map of Ireland and do them all, right? And then when the sun rather comes into the month, do a double one. This is all an experiment at the moment. It's all kind of come up since I've seen all of this happening. When I was in it, when I was feeling that, I didn't know what was happening to my brain. I thought I was going to go insane. And then when it got to this point, then I got it. And then when it got to this point, then I was thinking about the experiment. And then when it got to this point, I asked a few friends to experiment. And then when it got to in between this point, I asked everyone else to experiment. And so this is, I believe this can work because we know about resonance and amplification. We know about thought having an impact on the structure of water molecules, the power of prayer having an impact on the water molecules. Everything is made out of elements and water molecules. So what can happen to our physical body and our hologram as Ireland, it's the same. If they're doing a ritual when the moon comes into certain star signs that align with events on Ireland, then why can we not use the same information but in a positive way? Because we know that protest doesn't work. Protest, all it did was fuel louche energy into what they wanted. So to not make louche energy is to do things in a completely different way, to use our power of our word, our sound, in a conscious, positive way. And the most conscious, positive way I can think of at the moment is using the Psalm 23 in Irish, which is almost extinct. And why is it almost extinct as a language? Is because of what Romulus and Remus has been trying to do to Ireland for thousands of years, which is completely destroy Ireland in terms of it having any connection back to the Bible, which they stole, and then they inverted the teachings and used it as a religious control system to create the reality that we have now, that I must say is not exactly the Garden of Eden that I wanted to be born into. But I think, once we can accept that as an actual, this is what happened to our history, then we can then start doing something in a positive way. So that's what my message has turned into. Interestingly, it all did start off years ago with just inspecting the map of Ireland and the map of the Taoist painting that I saw wasn't like an homage to Ireland, to show that the Eastern teachings that I learned with traditional Chinese medicine and all of those old ways actually most likely came from Ireland. And that's what McDarry is telling us, that the seafaring Phoenician Magian priests of the fire from Ireland went around the whole world in the time of the megalithic age. They were the builders of the pyramids, and they ceded all of this ancient knowledge to everyone in the world. And that's why it so does exist in all of the world in various forms of pieces and parts remembered. And when we tie all those pieces back together again, and East meets West, and we can see that, what McDarry was telling us, what Steiner was telling us, it really does have something magical to do with Ireland. So what greater thing can we do is to now help Ireland and help protect this magical land with, you know, recovering, resurrecting her language, if she is the connection to source, as the reflection of the human body. Therefore, the human body is the true reflection, connection to source, and it's not something external to you. It's not an external temple, and it's definitely not an external Jesus Christ. When you know the true meaning of Isa in Irish is talking about the human body, which I teach in my work, which I'm going to be developing more and more and more through these videos and through my online school, which will be opening very, very soon. So anyway, I hope that made sense. I know it's a lot, but this is what I believe is the big secret, the hidden agenda, what everyone's, you know, always online fired up about, but no one can see this. And this is what I really want to show to people, is this is the key to it all.